In 1990, a young South African left his homeland after completing his secondary education. He headed to Canada first, and then eventually moved south of the border to the United States. In the mid-1990s, he was involved in setting up a tech startup in the early days of the dot-com boom that commenced with the advent of the World Wide Web. When this business was sold a few years later, the young man became a millionaire. He would go on to set up numerous businesses over the next quarter of a century, investing in everything from renewable energy to cryptocurrency. This person was not Elon Musk. Instead, it was his younger brother Kimbal. Elon had moved to Canada in 1989. Kimbal only joined him there about a year later. Though his wealth and fame is in the shadow of his older brothers, Kimbal is a multi-millionaire. Estimates suggest he is worth somewhere between $600 and $900 million, while he owns and runs many different companies, many of them in the food and restaurant industry. Newspapers have referred to him as the wealthiest chef in America. Kimbal's story is significant. It emphasizes that the Musk family is not solely the story of Elon Musk. There is a wider family around him, and one with a long backstory going back to the UK and Canada, as well as South Africa. This is the story of the Musk family. The Musk family has roots in a number of different countries. On the paternal side, they primarily come from England, with roots of varying length in South Africa. This country was formed in 1910 when the various British colonies in the region, the Cape Colony, the Natal Colony, the Transvaal and the Orange River Colony, united to create the Union of South Africa. The original European colony here had been founded by the Dutch in 1652 and was primarily settled by Dutch, German and French Protestant settlers known as the Boers before the 19th century. The Cape Colony was officially transferred to the British Empire at the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815. Extensive colonial growth, fueled by some of the largest gold and diamond rushes in history at Kimberley and Johannesburg between the 1870s and 1900s, led to a massive influx of British people. Thus, there was a strong heritage of English people moving here from the early 19th century, a migration which explains the family's ultimate roots in southern Africa. Yet the various strands of the Musk family in the country did not all arrive at once. Some came early on, some came during the period of the World Wars, and others still came to South Africa via Canada after the war, itself a former part of the British Empire. This Canadian side of the family has partial roots in Switzerland, as denoted by the Haldeman surname. Thus, the Musk family is reflective of the age of European migrations, with roots in England, Switzerland and Canada, that all coalesced at the end of the era in South Africa. The Musk side of the family ultimately has older roots in the country, including Boer ancestry. Walter Henry James Musk, the grandfather of the famous Elon Musk, was born in the country in the early 20th century. An engineer, he served in North Africa during the Second World War, and then returned home where he married Cora Robinson, a woman who was born to an English father and a South African mother with Boer heritage. They had 2 sons soon after the war ended: Errol, who was born in Pretoria in the early summer of 1946, and his younger brother Michael. While branches of the Musks were firmly ensconced in South Africa prior to the Second World War, the path to the southernmost country in Africa was more complex for the maternal side of the family, the Haldemans. They came to South Africa from Canada. Their roots in North America go back to the 18th century, when members of the family who were practicing Mennonites, an Anabaptist group considered to be radical Protestants in some parts of Europe, left what was then the Swiss Confederacy to find religious freedom in the European colonies in North America. The family migrated westwards in the 19th century as part of the huge western expansion of the United States, eventually settling in the Great Lakes region. Joshua Norman Haldeman was born there at Pequot Lakes in Minnesota in November 1902, not far south of the border with Canada. When he was 2 years old, they moved over the border to the Canadian province of Saskatchewan. Joshua's life continued to have a kind of cross-border quality to it. He attended university in Chicago in the 1920s and became a chiropractor. Ultimately, he moved back to Canada, where he married twice and had 5 children. Of these, the most notable for the story of the Musk dynasty was Maye Haldeman, born along with her twin sister in 1948. In Canada, Joshua became heavily involved in politics, including with Technocracy Incorporated, an anti-democratic political party that was banned during the Second World War by the Canadian government. He then became a senior figure in the Social Credit Party and stood for election in Saskatchewan in the post-war years. Recent studies have suggested a strong strain of anti-Semitism in Joshua's political views, and after years of political failure in Canada, he made the decision in 1950 to move his family to South Africa. Apartheid, the system of white minority rule, had been introduced in 1948, and Haldeman viewed the system so favorably that he decided to move halfway around the world to live there. The family settled in the Pretoria, Johannesburg conurbation, where Walter and Cora Musk were raising their young family. Here, Joshua worked as a chiropractor and was a vocal supporter of apartheid. At the time that the Haldemans relocated to South Africa, Errol Musk was little more than a baby. His own family life was chaotic in a way that would see him briefly leave South Africa. His father Walter had come back from the Second World War, a changed man with a drinking problem. He was detached and spent a lot of his time doing crossword puzzles. Eventually, Cora became frustrated enough with his behavior that she left him and returned with young Errol and Michael to England for a period of time to be near her relatives there. Soon they returned to South Africa and settled once again in Pretoria. There, Errol was sent to attend Clapham High School. From a young age, he showed some ability for tinkering with electrical goods, and in the mid-1960s, he went on to attend the University of Pretoria, where he acquired a degree in electromagnetics. Thereafter, he started working in construction. It was a politically charged time in South Africa's history, but also one of rapid economic development, and a lot of large-scale building and construction projects were being undertaken that money could be made from. In time, Errol became someone who basically saw opportunities where they arose to make money, and then generally reinvested his profits into real estate and so forth. In this way, he became very well off in his younger years and midlife, though he also had a tendency to spend money as soon as he acquired it on luxury goods. He also forayed into politics, winning election in 1972 to the local council of the Pretoria suburb of Sunnyside as an independent candidate. Back in high school, Errol had met Maye Haldeman, who was nearly in the same year as him. In the mid-1960s, as he was off at university, she began modeling. They started seeing each other in the late 1960s. Maye was evidently skeptical about marrying Errol and turned down several marriage proposals before finally agreeing to marry him. Her reluctance was justified. The marriage started with a disastrous honeymoon on the French Riviera in late 1970, on which Errol availed of the fact that it was legal to buy pornography in France, which it wasn't in South Africa. 3 children then followed in quick succession back in South Africa. The eldest, Elon, was born on the 28th of June 1971, followed by Kimbal on the 20th of September 1972, and finally their only daughter, Tosca, on the 20th of July 1974. The newlyweds also worked together. Errol continued to run a construction business, and Maye began working on his accounts and undertook office work relating to the company. Yet, beyond the growing family and the appearance of domestic normality, the marriage was not going well. Errol was clearly not faithful to his wife, while she has claimed subsequently that he was physically and emotionally abusive towards her. In her autobiography, Maye describes a highly jealous husband, bordering on paranoid, who was convinced that she might cheat on him or already was. He would also try to limit her contact with her family. After several years of turmoil, including windows of time in which she would leave Errol with the children to go to live with her mother, her father Joshua having died in 1974, the couple eventually divorced in 1979. Initially, Maye had primary custody of the children, and they lived with her in the city of Durban, on the coast in the south, where she moved after the divorce. Custody disputes were lodged by Errol without success. But in 1981, after he started to feel sorry for his father, who he believed was lonely, Elon and then Kimbal went to live with their father. It was a move which both of them would later express regret over. Life for Maye and Tosca in the 1980s was comparatively easygoing. Tosca was just growing up, while Maye returned to working as a model and as a nutritionist. She had earned a degree as a dietitian from the University of the Orange Free State prior to marrying Errol, and had already carried out some part-time work offering nutritional advice in the 1970s while they were married. In Johannesburg with Errol, it was a different story for Elon and Kimbal. Errol was a difficult father to live with. He was prone to extreme bouts of anger and would frequently roar at length at his sons over perceived slights, or at least at issues that didn't warrant violent outbursts. There was a clear Jekyll and Hyde quality to his conduct at the same time, according to people who knew him. When he was flush with money, he would spend it on the family and was reputed to have even owned a Rolls-Royce with gold plating for a while, a status car that almost intentionally made him a potential victim of crime in a country with sky-high crime rates in the 1980s. Beyond this, Errol would involve his two sons in his shady business dealings and various capers he had designed to try to acquire money. For instance, in the mid-1980s, he started dressing them to look 16 years old so that he could get them into casinos and help him to try to beat the house. This was a life of surprising contrasts. Up until the same period, Errol continued to dip his toes in and out of politics, all the while engaging in a growing series of illicit schemes to acquire money. A story has become synonymous with Errol Musk during the 1980s, while Elon and Kimbal were living with their father. This concerns his alleged ownership of an emerald mine in Zambia. The mine has regularly featured in news stories over the years, as the belief is that Errol made a huge amount of money from it, and this money was then used to finance Elon and Kimbal to set up their first business in the United States in the mid-1990s. The implication is that the Musk family wealth today ultimately stems from the emerald mine in a roundabout way, as the emerald mine provided the seed money for Elon's subsequent business career. However, the truth is a little less dramatic. Errol never owned an emerald mine, though there was a quite unusual set of circumstances that led to him becoming an emerald smuggler for a brief period in the mid to late 1980s. Errol was an amateur pilot, and in 1986 he was flying his plane over Zambia, a country which does have a large number of emerald mines. He happened to land at an airstrip where he got talking to an Italian Panamanian smuggler who wanted to buy his plane in return for a cut of the emeralds he had acquired as proceeds from 3 different emerald mines in Zambia. This strange set of events led to Errol becoming a contact for emerald smugglers in South Africa. The uncut stones were brought from Zambia to Errol in Johannesburg. He then had them cut in South Africa and moved them out of the country. Over the space of a year or two, Errol made over $200,000 from this emerald smuggling activity. This is equivalent to around $550,000 in today's money. As such, while it was not the millions of dollars that has sometimes been implied in stories about Errol's smuggling activities, he did make a substantial amount of cash from this in a short period of time. He never actually owned an emerald mine, though, At the end of the 1980s, Elon was reaching the end of his time in secondary education, and he began thinking about what he was going to do. Anxious to leave his father's house, he started looking into the possibility of acquiring American citizenship, and even applied for this on the basis that his grandfather on his mother's side had come from Minnesota originally. This didn't work, and he eventually ended up getting on a flight to his mother's home country, Canada, in June 1989. He would never look back, and lived in North America permanently thereafter, only returning to South Africa occasionally on family visits. In Canada, he went to live first with cousins on his mother's side of the family. He worked odd jobs and enlisted for a period of time in the Queen's University of Ontario. Meanwhile, in South Africa, Kimbal decided to follow his brother's example as soon as he finished school, and he also left Errol's household to go to Canada a year after Elon had done so. Around this very same time period, Maye and Tosca also began preparing to make the journey from South Africa to Canada. This was not highly unusual for the time period. Firstly, military conscription was mandatory for young white South Africans like Elon and Kimbal, and eventually they would have had to serve a period in the military if they had remained on in their native country. Secondly, South Africa was changing. While apartheid remained in place in 1989 and 1990, when the family members were departing for Canada, the international boycott movement and domestic political tensions had escalated to the point where white minority rule and the apartheid system's days were numbered. The Musks would be just a handful of the hundreds of thousands of white South Africans who left the country by the end of the 20th century. Errol was the exception to the rule in the family. He remained behind in South Africa, and in the early 1990s he started a new relationship with a woman by the name of Heide Bezuidenhout, whose husband Jock had recently been killed in a car accident, leaving her a widow with several young children. Errol married her in 1994. It is unclear if this was his second or third marriage. In her autobiography, Maya Haldeman claimed that Errol married a woman named Sue at some stage in the 1980s and divorced her literally hours later. Additional details about this incident or whether it ever really happened are impossible to come by. What's clear is that Errol's marriage to Heide and his life in South Africa after Elon and Kimbal was deeply controversial. His stepchildren are believed to have been in and out of foster care, while accusations have arisen in 2025 that he abused them. He had two further daughters with Heide as well, Alexandra and Asha Rose. Eventually, his and Heide's marriage would end in divorce as well in 2004. In the interim, Errol claims that a property he owned in Johannesburg was burgled in 1998 in a bizarre incident in which he apparently shot and killed 3 of the intruders after dodging a series of bullets using karate moves, which he alleges he learned as a younger man. His wheeler-dealer ways were also catching up with him, and as South Africa entered the post-apartheid era, it was no longer as easy to make money from schemes like emerald smuggling or other kinds of semi-illicit ventures. By the 2000s, he was in financial trouble. We know that Errol must have remained quite financially solvent in the 1990s, as he played a role in financing the start of Elon and Kimbal's careers. In the early 1990s, Elon transferred from Queen's University in Ontario to attend the University of Pennsylvania. He did not finish there and headed out to California instead to try to enroll in Stanford University. Instead, he started a business out west. It was the start of the dotcom boom as the World Wide Web burst across the globe, and all manner of new companies were created to try to take advantage of the admittedly rustic technology by today's standards. In 1995, Elon and Kimbal started a company called Zip2. The idea of this was that it would basically be an online telephone and business directory. Prior to the advent of the internet, people kept large directories printed on cheap yellow paper in their homes and offices with a mass of phone numbers and basic details about local businesses and people. The idea of Zip2, in a nutshell, was to move this material online for numerous large American cities, although the Musk brothers expanded it outwards after the initial material was added. In 1999, it had reached the point where they sold it to Compaq, a computer company of the era, for the vastly inflated price of $300 million at the height of the dot-com bubble. Although Elon has tried to downplay it or outright deny it since, Errol played a role in this early success. He provided his two sons with $28,000 worth of funding to get Zip2 up and running, which was a lot of money in 1995. The reality is that without this financing, the world might never have heard of Elon Musk. Zip2 was the first of several business ventures that Elon became involved in from 1995 onwards that catapulted him to the forefront of the business world in Silicon Valley. He and Kimbal could have retired quite comfortably on the money they had made from the sale of Zip2 itself, which was about $22 million in Elon's case and $15 million in Kimbal's. Instead, they became involved in numerous new ventures. An especially noteworthy one was X.com, which Elon founded with Ed Ho, Harris Fricker, and Christopher Payne in 1999, with additional financing from the venture capitalist Ed Khoury. This was a financial services company and online bank. Elon invested half of his proceeds from the sale of Zip2 into the new venture. The goal of it was to create a new online financial services platform that would make people more confident about shopping online. The late 1990s was an era in which the World Wide Web was novel and plagued by safety issues, making people reluctant to use their credit cards online. There were therefore many companies competing to build financial platforms that people would feel safe using. X.com was ahead of a lot of its competitors from a technical perspective, but it was plagued by internal issues. Musk and his co-founders fell out, and Fricker, Ho, and Payne all left the company. Despite the internal turmoil, X.com grew well. It then merged with Confinity in March 2000 to become PayPal. A dispute followed, and Musk was removed as CEO in favor of Peter Thiel. Regardless of all the infighting, PayPal went through an enormously successful initial public offering in 2002 and was then acquired by eBay. Although he had been muscled out of his leadership position by Thiel, Musk was the largest shareholder, and he netted around $175 million from the sale to eBay. Even before the sale of PayPal had made Elon immensely wealthier than he already was, he was considering a new company. This was not Tesla. That company was not founded by Musk. He became an investor after it was founded by different people. What Musk did set up at the start of the 21st century was SpaceX. It is important to bear in mind the wider space exploration landscape at the time. Back in the late 1950s and 1960s, huge advances were made by the United States and the Soviet Union in developing the field of space exploration. An enormous chunk of both superpowers' annual budgets was expended in this period on their space programs. Then, the US made it to the moon in 1969 and won the space race. The 1970s oil crisis and a decade of economic stagnation in both America and Russia followed. As this happened, financing for NASA collapsed, and space exploration slowed dramatically. Musk founded SpaceX in 2002 with the explicit goal of reviving space exploration. From day one, he talked about sending missions to Mars. This obviously could not be achieved overnight, and all of Musk's targets have been missed. What has happened at the same time, though, is that SpaceX has developed a series of rockets, the Falcon series, which have drastically reduced the cost of sending shuttles and satellites into space. In 2015, the company managed the successful landing of a reusable rocket, the Falcon 9, a milestone in space travel. By then, Musk already had billions of dollars in contracts from NASA as the US government subcontracted much of its space program to the company. While sending a mission to Mars remains more a theoretical than a plausible target, SpaceX is heavily involved in the Artemis program that aims to send humans back to the Moon in 2027 or 2028. While SpaceX remains a private company, if it was to go public tomorrow, it is believed that it would be worth between $300 and $400 billion, making it one of the 30 largest companies in the S&P 500. Musk owns an estimated 42% of the company. While Musk was founding SpaceX and building it up as a small startup in California from 2002 onwards, he was also investing his winnings from the sale of PayPal into additional companies. One of these was Tesla Motors. The company was founded in July 2003 by Mark Tarpenning and Martin Eberhard. It was not founded by Musk, as is sometimes assumed. Nor was this the start of some electric car revolution. Functional electric cars were first designed in the 1880s and gained traction before the growing availability of cheap petroleum and the Ford Model T killed the market in the 1910s and 1920s. There was a revival of interest in the 1980s and 1990s as states like California passed local laws that encouraged American automakers to produce zero-emissions cars. A lot of the technology and design features that were incorporated into Tesla's cars were actually first developed for cars like AC Propulsion's T0 in the 1990s. Musk became involved early in 2004. Although Eberhard and Tarpenning had a lot of capital from the sale of their earlier company, which had designed an early e-book reader during the dotcom boom, they needed additional funding, and Musk helped lead the funding round in 2004. He joined the board and became a notable shareholder in the period that followed. He also invested in Solar City during this period, a solar energy generation company founded by his cousins Peter and Lyndon Rive in 2006. Solar City would later be acquired by Tesla in 2016 for $2.6 billion and became a part of its energy infrastructure. By then, the company had become a major installer of solar panels in the US. However, it was also carrying an awful lot of debt. In the late 2000s, Musk's major focus became Tesla. He continued to expand his shareholding in the company and his role there, and in 2008, he succeeded Zeev Drory as CEO after Drory had overseen a turnaround in the company's fortunes after a period of financial and commercial danger that nearly led to the death of the company before it ever really got going. Musk might not have founded Tesla, but no one can deny that he built the company up in the years that followed to become a leading automaker that played a major role in revolutionizing the electric car industry. While it was really more of a startup with very little by way of actual sales and revenue in the 2000s, from 2012, sales of Tesla cars began to accelerate very dramatically into the thousands and then tens of thousands. By the end of the 2010s, the company was on the way to moving over 100,000 units per quarter. In the process, the company inspired a whole new wave of electric car makers to emerge in North America, Europe and China. The strange thing about this is that Elon's environmental credentials are not exactly Loctite. He has criticized public transport, especially buses, which environmentalists note will have to play a major role in any fossil fuel transition. In recent times, his politics has aligned more with groups that are in favor of the continued use of oil, natural gas, and other carbon-heavy energy sources. Most strikingly, as the AI boom has intensified, Musk's xAI company has built a supercomputer site in Memphis, Tennessee, to power his Grok AI platform that uses 30 methane gas turbines. Methane is amongst the worst environmentally unfriendly gases to be used for such an endeavour. On the other hand, when it comes to his environmentalism, there are additional successes, notably his development of reusable rockets through SpaceX. When it comes to his environmental credentials, Elon is quite contradictory. Elon's personal life has generated a huge amount of press attention over the years. His first wife was Justine Wilson. She was born in Ontario in 1972 and met Elon in the early 1990s while they were both studying at the Queen's University in that part of Canada. They began seeing each other in 1992, though generally in an on-again, off-again way, as Elon began moving around a lot to Pennsylvania and then California in the years that followed, while Justine went to work in Japan for a while. Eventually, they got married in 2000. Justine followed her aspirations to become a writer and published several books. Elon worked on building up several companies. The firstborn child, Nevada, sadly died of sudden infant death syndrome at 10 weeks old in 2002. They visited an IVF clinic 2 months later in the hopes of having a child again as quickly as possible. Instead, an abundance of children arrived. In 2004, Justine gave birth to twins, and then in 2006, male triplets arrived. From having lost one child in 2002, Elon and Justine had 5 at the end of 2006. The marriage did not last long beyond this. In a detailed portrait of it, which Justine wrote shortly after they divorced in 2008, she stated that she suffered from years of depression owing to Nevada's death in 2002, while Elon was a workaholic who she felt was never emotionally present even when he was at home. Their split in September 2008 came after an abortive attempt at counselling. In the years that followed, Justine and Elon would share custody of their children. He then married the English actress Tallulah Riley in 2010. They divorced in 2012, then remarried the following year before divorcing for a second time in 2016 without ever having any children. As we will see, Elon's marital and family life has only continued to get more complicated as the years have gone by. While his personal life was in flux in the late 2000s and through the 2010s, Elon's business career was on a steady upward trajectory. Tesla faced many challenges in the first 10 years during which he was CEO, including repeated delays and missed deadlines when it came to new product launches and production targets. However, it was growing steadily and was greatly aided by federal and state laws in the US and California that provided large subsidies to electric car makers and new tax incentives to consumers who bought electric vehicles. The company's sales started to really skyrocket in the late 2010s, in line with these moves. In 2019, the company sold 367,000 units, then nearly doubling to over 650,000 in 2020, before topping 1 million sales in a year for the first time in 2022, after the COVID-19 pandemic came to an end. In the process, Tesla's share price began to take off. In 2011, shares had been worth $2 each, and from 2014 to 2019, they continued to hover between $10 and $20. It was only in 2020 that the share price ballooned upwards to approximately $250 per share at the end of 2020. As the largest shareholder in the company, this saw Elon's personal wealth, at least on paper, multiply several times over, and he surpassed Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, to become the world's richest person for the first time, a position he has held on and off ever since as the stock market has fluctuated. As this has happened, Elon has generated more and more press attention and become a household name globally, in the process leading to increased focus on the lives of the rest of the Musk family. Musk continued to invest in startups and turn his own ideas into new companies. A well-known example was his establishment of Neuralink. This seeks to develop implantable brain-computer interfaces which would allow for people to control computers with their brains without direct contact. The most obvious application of this technology would be to allow people who might be disabled or have reduced mobility in some way to operate more independently using direct brain transmission to computers. The company is also working on ways to restore sight in revolutionary ways, and the company remains a viable entity which is making slow but steady breakthroughs that might have a real impact on advanced medicine by the middle of the 21st century. Conversely, there have been some complete failures or things that are simply pipe dreams. For instance, the Boring Company was set up in 2017 to develop new ways of tunneling that would allegedly allow for futuristic tunnel infrastructure and high-speed travel between major cities. It has made little progress. More striking are his plans to build Hyperloop high-speed transport systems through a sealed, low-pressure system. First conceptualized back in 2013 to connect Los Angeles to the San Francisco Bay Area, there has been virtually zero real progress towards achieving this, and engineers and transport experts have questioned both the practical feasibility of the project and the potential costs. Surely, though, the most striking examples of Elon's hubris are his statements concerning manned missions to the planet Mars. According to his earliest pronouncements, humans would already be on Mars by the mid-2020s. The date has constantly been changed since, with the most recent projection being 2027, and dozens of missions being run annually by the start of the 2030s. This seems very unlikely. Elon is not the only Musk. Since moving back to North America with Tosca in 1990, Maye has continued to carve out a very successful modeling career, working with Special K, Target and Revlon, and appearing on the covers of magazines such as Elle. She also published a memoir entitled A Woman Makes a Plan, Advice for a Lifetime of Adventure, Beauty and Success. A lot of background detail on the family was provided here, though sometimes in a very fleeting way. Maye, for instance, mentions Errol's brief marriage to a woman named Sue in the 1980s, but beyond stating that Sue was a fellow model and that the marriage seemingly lasted less than a day or two, there are no further details of any kind. Tosca studied at the University of British Columbia and moved into the entertainment industry. With some financial aid from Elon, she began her directorial career in 2001 with a film called Puzzled. In the mid-2000s, she was involved in one of the first ever ventures into vodcast production, podcasts that blended video with audio. She continues to make movies and is the co-founder of Passion Flicks, a streaming service that releases shows and films based on romance novels. Kimbal is the most successful member of the family after Elon. He sits on the board of several of Elon's companies, notably Tesla and SpaceX. He has also started many of his own ventures, notably moving into the culinary industry. He owns and operates many restaurants and food production services, including the Kitchen Community, a non-profit organization that has establishments all around the country and which expanded into Big Green, a program that feeds children in hundreds of schools across the US. Not a lot is known about Errol's children from his marriage to Haida. Alexandra went on to study in the United States. She followed other members of the family into the renewable energy sector. Asher Rose was married in South Africa in 2025 and seemingly continues to live there. There is a new generation of Musks today. Tosca, for instance, has 2 children, a twin boy and girl who were born through IVF, and an anonymous donor back in 2013, as she did not wish to get married and settled down at the time. Kimbal has been married twice, first to Jen Lewin, an artist and engineer, between 2001 and 2010. and since 2018 to Christiana Wiley. He has 3 children. Kimbal's personal life was nearly altered dramatically in 2010 when he was temporarily paralyzed during an inner tubing accident, an activity which involves a person being dragged on a speedboat inside a kind of donut-shaped tubing. Elon, as is well recorded, has 14 children, including 2 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets. Many of his children from his marriage to Justine between 2000 and 2008 are now young adults themselves and are in college and so forth. As we will see, his paternity of his later children and his relationships with them have been complex. In the summer of 2016, there was a rare reunion of a large number of the family members in South Africa. Several of Elon and Kimbal's older children were old enough that they wanted to bring them back to their place of birth to see the country. They decided on a dual family holiday. They had not seen their father in many years, and there had been a very piecemeal relationship over much of that period. For Elon, a lot of this stemmed from a 2002 visit to America by Errol and his family with Haida. This occurred just after Elon's first child with Justine had died in infancy of sudden infant death syndrome. During the visit to California, Elon and his first wife had been disturbed by the interactions between Errol and his stepdaughter Jana, who was 15 years old at the time. The visit to South Africa in the summer of 2016 coincided with both Errol's 70th birthday and Elon's 45th. They therefore met for a joint meal in Cape Town. It was not, however, a roaring success. Reports afterwards claim Errol dominated the conversation and made many people feel uncomfortable. It was cut short after an hour. It would be many years before Elon and Errol met again, and his relationship with all of his children from his marriage to Maya is almost non-existent today. The explanation for this was partly due to news arriving into the US in 2017 that Errol had fathered another child, a boy, with his former stepdaughter Jana. A daughter followed a few years later. Errol's decision to begin a relationship and father children with a former stepdaughter who had been 5 years old when Errol had married her mother back in 1994 was all too much for Elon and other family members. In an infamous interview which he gave to Rolling Stone magazine in 2017, shortly after he learned of his father's relationship with Jana, Elon described him as evil. As we will see very shortly, he was possibly aware by then that Errol had engaged in even worse acts than his latter-day relationship with Jana. In the late 2010s and early 2020s, Elon started to become an ever more present feature in the news on an almost daily basis. Some of this was related to his businesses, although a lot of it was about separate affairs. In particular, he seemed to be using the social media site Twitter an increasing amount for presenting his views on all manner of things, from politics to social matters, and in particular his opposition to woke culture, something which he began to refer to as the woke mind virus. Eventually, his preoccupation with Twitter became so great that in January 2022 he began buying shares in the company, and in April he initiated moves to acquire the social media platform. The deal turned into a haze of controversy as Elon made a buyout offer of $44 billion, which was then quickly identified by experts as being far too much to pay for the site. Elon then tried to pull out of the deal before he was legally forced into completing it on account of his earlier offer having been legally binding. The deal was finalized in October 2022. In the year that followed, hardly a day went by when Twitter wasn't in the news. Elon renamed it as X in homage to X.com, the financial services company he had founded back in 1999. Once Elon was in charge, huge staff layoffs were undertaken and the site was rebranded, moving towards becoming an everything app. When Elon was not in the news because of Twitter, he was grabbing headlines due to his personal life, A much-publicized relationship with the musician Claire Boucher, better known as Grimes, led to 3 children with the peculiar names X, Ash, A12, Ava Dark Sideral, and Techno Mechanicus, born between May 2020 and June 2022. Unbeknownst to Boucher, Musk had started an affair with Siobhan Zilis, a senior employee at Tesla and Neuralink. They had twins together in 2021 and have had 2 further children since, in 2024 and 2025. In recent times, Elon Musk has become as prominent for his political views and activities as he is for his work as a businessman. His political outlook has shifted considerably. Back in the 2000s and for most of the 2010s, he was known for making campaign contributions to the Democratic Party and for meeting on many occasions with President Barack Obama or senior members of his administration between 2009 and 2017. He has also said that he voted for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 US presidential election. There are reasons why he needs to be involved in politics to a degree, namely his business interests. SpaceX, in particular, has government contracts worth billions of dollars and is basically the privatized wing of NASA at this stage. In tandem, he did occasionally support Republican Party candidates. Gradually, he moved more towards doing so from the mid-2010s, often citing his concerns over woke culture and curtailments to free speech on the left of the political spectrum. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, he dramatically increased his financing of the Republicans and organizations aligned with the Republican Party on political issues such as Citizens for Sanity. It was really in the run-up to the 2024 US presidential election, though, which occurred in conjunction with a slew of elections to both the Senate and House of Representatives, that Musk began to make his desire to influence the politics of the United States abundantly clear. He came out in support of Donald Trump and campaigned extensively with him, while also providing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of financing to Trump and Republican candidates around the country. In the end, he backed the winning side. Trump won the presidential election, even winning the popular vote for the first time in his 3rd such election. The Republicans also took control over the Senate and the House of Representatives. Trump's re-election as President of the United States in November 2024 placed Elon in a powerful position and also placed him in the public glare to an even greater extent. His campaign financing had certainly helped Trump's election victory, as had his support in general, though this was possibly overstated in the media at the time. Trump had comfortably won the Electoral College by 312 to 226 votes. Had the election been closer, it might have been reasonable to suggest that Elon played a critical role, but this was not the case. Nonetheless, he was rewarded with a peculiar position as a powerful reformer of the government apparatus, a person who was both inside of government and outside of it at the same time. This was through his management of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, a play on the name of a cryptocurrency that Musk had been a long-term fan of. Throughout the first months of the Trump administration, Musk was very important in making radical cuts to government spending and eliminating a large number of programs that the US had built up since the Second World War. He met with a lot of criticism for some of his actions during this time, and Tesla sales took a hammering as a result of his associations with the government. Yet, at the same time, he does seem to have been genuinely concerned about the absolutely gargantuan size of the US debt mountain, which is scheduled to hit $40 trillion on current trajectory in late 2026 or early 2027. This was partly the cause of the acrimonious split between Trump and Musk in May 2025, as Musk became highly critical of a Trump-backed budget bill that would offer tax cuts for the richest in American society. Musk's work in trying to cut government waste would be eradicated via the bill because of a decline in tax revenue. Additionally, there was growing concern at Tesla about the damage which Musk's absence and involvement with the government was having on the company's sales and share price, while rumors also swirled about Musk's use of ketamine and possible physical altercations with other members of Trump's cabinet, claims that were fueled when he showed up with a black eye to an Oval Office meeting to mark his departure from the White House. Although Elon's immediate split from Trump was portrayed as an amicable departure, it quickly descended into a war of words on X and Truth Social, Musk and Trump's respective social media platforms. This created further concern about Tesla's share price and also the security of SpaceX's government contracts, although in reality, NASA has outsourced so much of its operations to SpaceX that it has no option but to keep those same contracts in place for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, Tesla's board has sought to refocus Elon's attention on building up Tesla by proposing to pay him $1 trillion if he can build the company up to have a market cap of around $8 trillion by the mid-2030s. Virtually all market analysts have stated that this is completely unrealistic for an automaker facing strong competition from emergent electric car manufacturers like China's BYD. Though perhaps if Musk does transform Tesla into an AI robotics company, as it is arcing towards, and wraps some of his other companies up under it as an umbrella organization, especially SpaceX, Stargate, and Musk's new AI initiative Grok, it could be feasible. That being said, it seems more like a push from the board of Tesla to refocus his energies on the company than a plausibly achievable market capitalization for the company by 2036. Elon's foray in and out of politics in 2024 and 2025 is the aspect of the Musk family's life that has caught the most attention in recent times. Yet many additional things have featured in the news headlines. For instance, Elon's direct family affairs are constantly making headlines. He has openly fallen out with his eldest daughter, Vivian, who is transgender. This has led to a lot of analysts arguing that Musk's assaults on woke culture and elements of liberalism in recent times is a reaction to Vivian's life's course and their complete estrangement from each other. He has also regularly been in court with Grimes about custody arrangements for their children together. Boucher was vocally critical of their son being present at press conferences in the Oval Office early in 2025. To complicate matters further, it was alleged by a conservative influencer by the name of Ashley Sinclair in February 2025 that she had given birth to a son in the late autumn of 2024 who was Musk's child. Elon initially denied that the boy, named Romulus, after the ancient founder of Rome, was his child. However, a paternity test confirmed he is the father, and he has commenced paying Sinclair child support. Then, in September 2025, there came an in-depth New York Times article accusing Errol Musk of abusing his two daughters via his marriage to Heide Bezuidenhout and his 3 stepchildren from the same relationship. Charges which he has denied, but which built on months of speculation after Elmi, Heide's sister, engaged in an extensive anonymous interview detailing the allegations all the way back to 1993. Next to all of this controversy surrounding father and son, the rest of the Musks can sometimes disappear into the background. They are, though, continuing to engage in their own projects. In 2025, Kimbal was named the wealthiest chef in the US, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, the founder of DreamWorks, invested in his new drone-based entertainment company called Nova Sky Company. As such, behind the drama and worrying headlines concerning Errol, there is frequently a new project of one kind or another being launched by the Musks. The story of the Musk family is a frequently messy one that has played out in a very public way over the last 10 years or so, as Elon has become the world's wealthiest man, and amongst the most influential people in the world. we would know virtually nothing about any of the older Musks were it not for his rise, as detailed studies of his grandparents' time in Canada and South Africa have only appeared as research has been carried out in the last few years to establish Elon's background. That work has revealed a dynasty with roots in Britain, Switzerland, South Africa, and Canada, the different branches of which coalesced in South Africa in the 1950s. Not long afterwards, when they were still teenagers, Errol Musk first met Maye Haldeman. They got married in 1970 and had 3 children, Elon, Kimbal, and Tosca. The marriage was acrimonious throughout. Maye accused Errol of being both unfaithful and abusive. He admits to the first charge and denies the second. They divorced in 1979. Not long afterwards, in the early 1980s, Elon and Errol went to live with their father, a decision both men say they later regretted, while Tosca remained with their mother. A wheeler-dealer who made money from one scam or barely legal opportunity after another, Errol was seemingly extremely difficult to live with. As soon as Elon finished high school, he left home and headed for Canada, where he was able to obtain a visa owing to his mother's Canadian background. In the couple of years that followed, virtually the entire family, with the exception of Errol, relocated to Canada. Elon and Kimbal soon headed south to the US and began their swift ascent to become wealthy businessmen during the dotcom boom and bubble of the second half of the 1990s, though not without some initial financial aid from their father. There have been achievements. Kimbal is an enormously successful businessman in his own right, while there is no denying that Elon is a visionary whose companies have achieved some spectacular successes. These range from the mass market appeal of Tesla and the way it repopularized the electric car in the 2010s, to SpaceX's reusable rockets and Starlink's reconceptualization of how internet access can take place worldwide. At the same time, there has been a lot of controversy, most notably allegations about Errol's conduct towards his stepchildren, one of whom he has fathered 2 children with. Undoubtedly, Elon has become an increasingly controversial figure since around 2020, through his constant stream of views on what used to be Twitter, his political activity, and the apparent contradictions in his environmental credentials. This is a story that is only half over. Nobody can be sure where it will go next. Perhaps Elon will manage to deliver on the perceived potential of Tesla. Perhaps he will overplay his hand, and his empire will run into major trouble as he juggles way too many balls at once. Only time will tell. What do you think of the Musk family? Might large parts of Elon Musk's personality, political views, and work be explained by his family background? Or does it seem likely that it had little impact, given that he left South Africa as soon as he finished his basic secondary education? Please let us know in the comment section. And in the meantime, thank you very much for watching.